Vamos a empezar.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Portside Community Steering Committee meeting for April 2024. Buenos días a todos a la reunión del Comité Directivo de la Comunidad Portside, la reunión de abril 2024. We'll give it a few moments as folks from the public start joining us online. We'll give it le daremos unos pocos momentos para que gente se pueda reunirse con nosotros del público.
Ok. Buenas tardes.
Buenas
tardes.
Great. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to one of our wonderful interpreters, Vicky, to give instructions on how to access interpretation.
Okay. Yes, good afternoon. I will first give the instructions in Spanish and then in English. Buenas tardes. Sí, en esta tarde, gracias por acompañarnos hoy. Antes de empezar la reunión, le explico otra vez las funciones necesarias para acceder a la interpretación simultánea al español. Si están utilizando su computadora portátil o de escritorio, favor de localizar el icono como figura de globo, en la parte inferior de su pantalla cuando este aparezca en unos minutos y luego pulsen en interpretación de lenguaje. En inglés dice Language Interpretation y seleccionen el idioma español. Si están conectándose desde su teléfono, iPad o dispositivo similar, busquen el menú con los tres puntitos en la esquina superior del lado derecho de su pantalla y pulsen Interpretación de lenguaje, otra vez Language Interpretation y luego el español. Esto permite que escuchen a la traducción en español con un 80% de volumen y el audio en inglés se escuchará al fondo con 20% de volumen. Tienen la opción de apagar el audio en inglés pulsando Mute Original Audio, ubicado en el mismo menú donde eligieron el idioma español. Gracias. For those of you that are joining us and do not understand Spanish, if anyone is going to be speaking in Spanish, and you are using a laptop or a desktop computer, in a few moments at the bottom of your screen, there will be a figure of a globe, and you can click on that and then choose language interpretation and choose English. If you're connecting from a smartphone, an iPad, or another sort of smart device, look for the three dots on the top right of your screen, click on that, and that same globe figure will appear when we say it's activated, and you click on that and again choose English. Thank you very much, and this concludes the instructions. Eso concluye las instrucciones en los dos idiomas, y ahora vamos a esperar que se activen los canales. We'll now wait for the channels to be activated.
So much, Vicky. Muchas gracias, Vicky. The language interpretation channels are now open, so please feel free to join the channel with the language of your choice. And if you're fully bilingual, feel free to stay on this channel. Anna, can you confirm that the interpretation is coming through clearly?
Yes, it is.
Great. Thank you so much. Once again, would love to welcome everybody to our fourth meeting of the year for the AB 617 Portside Community Steering Committee meeting. We have a relatively packed agenda, so we don't want to take too much time. We have a set of wonderful presenters, as well as a couple of steering committee members presenting on a few items today. At this time, I'll hand it over to Anna to go over the meeting objectives and the agenda, as well as the roll call.
Thank you, Chuy, and good afternoon, everyone. So today we have a couple of meeting objectives, so I'll run through them quickly. So first, we'll provide feedback on some outreach materials for the draft for the Portside Community Steering Committee. We will also be receiving two budget updates, one from the Air Pollution Control District's budget for the fiscal year 2024 and 2025, and the other, we will be receiving an update from CARB regarding the state's proposed budget. And we go to the next slide. We will then be voting on a proposed letter presented by EHC regarding the California state budget cuts, particularly for environmental justice funding. And then lastly, we will be learning about the Port of San Diego's grant application for the EPA Clean Ports funding. And so with that, so for today's agenda, after we go over roll call and general updates, we will move on to the approval of last month's meeting notes as well as tonight's agenda, followed by a discussion on the draft Portside CSC outreach materials. And then we will be receiving an update from CARB on the California state's budget for fiscal year 2024 through 2025. And then another budget update from the Air Pollution Control District for also fiscal year 2024 to 2025. Followed by an action item regarding the state budget letter to the Office of the Governor. And then lastly, we will have a presentation from the Port of San Diego regarding the EPA Clean Ports grant application. And we will then be closing out this meeting with public comments and closing remarks. So with that, we'll go ahead and move to the meeting agreements. So just a reminder of the meetings agreements to create space for everyone to contribute, to step up if you're more on the quiet side, step back if you've had a chance to speak. Reminder that only one person speak at a time, listen to each other, respect each other's opinions, knowledge, and perspectives. Be conscious of time since we do have a pretty tight agenda, so we want to make sure we get you all here at a time. And then lastly, to please speak slowly and clearly for our interpreters. So with that, we'll go ahead and move to roll call. So let me screen. All right, so Keith?
Yep, I'm here.
Thank you, Keith. Jack?
I'm here. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. Massey?
Good evening, I'm here.
Thank you. Sarah?
I'm here.
Thank you. Lydia? Leslie? Phil?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Tim?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Mariela?
Mariela here, hi.
Thank you. Nick Paul?
I'm here.
Thank you. Joy?
Good evening, I'm here.
Thank you. Martin? David? Roman? Sapia? Stefan? Dr. Stephanie?
here.
Yu?
I'm here.
Thank you. Jose?
Sure.
I see. Jose, thank you. Diane? And Nick? Nick Riddy?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Sergio? Jonathan?
I'm here. Liana is not.
Thank you. Filomena? Janice?
Presente.
Gracias. John? Let's see. I got you, John.
Present.
Thank you. Hillary? Alicia?
Presente.
Gracias. Margarita?
Aquí estoy.
Gracias. Naomi? Vanessa,
Here.
thank you. Salvador,
Present.
thank you. Sylvia,
Present.
thank you. Ashley. Josephine,
I'm here.
thank you. And Maritza.
Present.
Thank you. All right, and with that, we meet quorum for today's meeting. So back to you, Chewy.
Great. Thank you, Anna. And to close out roll call, I did want to welcome the newest member of the CSC, David Ramos. Is David on the line? And if so, if you can quickly introduce yourself to the group, that'd be great.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is David Ramos. I'm a resident of Logan Heights, and I'm happy to be here to represent my community.
Great. Thank you so much, David, and welcome. Also want to do a quick update from their district. There is also a new staff member from the San Diego Air Pollution Control District's Environmental Justice team. Would like to give a warm welcome to David Flores, who is familiar with this committee and is now joined the APCD in a new role. Welcome, David. Now would love to turn it over to the SANDAG team, who have a quick update and introduction to one of their staff members.
Awesome. Thank you, Chewy. Tim Garrett, primary member for the CSC from SANDAG. So just an update. Last month's meeting, we heard an update from Caltrans on the Harbor Drive 2.0 project. And so we want to clarify that project management has been transferred over to SANDAG moving forward. And so I'd like to introduce Andrea Hoff, who will be the point of contact for Harbor Drive 2.0 moving forward. And so she's on the line tonight, so I'll turn it over to Andrea to say hi.
Thanks, Tim. Hello, everyone. Andrea Hoff. I'm a project manager at SANDAG. And Harbor 2.0 is a collaboration with Caltrans, as you know. I'll be the PM or the project manager on the SANDAG side for the design phase, which is going to kick off here pretty soon. It's really my pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to getting to know you all a bit more. The project itself involves the Port of San Diego, your communities, national cities, City of San Diego, SANDAG, Caltrans, the Navy, a whole mix of stakeholders on the working waterfront. And it will be my goal to encourage collaboration among us all to really bring some solutions to this key corridor and buffer trucks from residential areas. So nice to be here and looking forward to working with you. Thanks.
I have one last update from Port of San Diego, a quick announcement on the survey.
Sure, thank you. This is Phil Gibbons at the Port of San Diego. I just wanted to mention that we have an active survey out to better understand the needs of the community on, it's a workforce development survey regarding zero emission technologies and infrastructure. We'd like to understand what the need is from the community out there so that we can develop resources to start training and educating people appropriately. So I'll put a link into the chat, and if you can fill that out if you wish or share that with your friends, we'd appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Phil. And just a reminder for folks to add your chat to everybody. So folks on the attendee side of things can also see those chats. Great. This time would like to move on to our next item, which is the approval of last month's meeting notes and tonight's agenda. would like to open it up to the committee for consideration of the motion.
Is Jack Monger so moved?
This is Maritza, I second.
Great. Motion from Jack and seconded by Maritza. Great. There are no other motions, so we'll move forward with that motion. If there's anyone against or abstaining the motion, please raise your hand. Seeing no hands raised, so thank you. The notes and tonight's agenda are approved. Moving on to the next item, would love to hand it over to Lauren from the APCD team to present on some draft outreach materials specific to the Portside Community Steering Committee.
Thanks, Chewy. Hi, everybody. I hope that you are seeing my screen. Yes, okay, great. So very quickly, I think I have 10 minutes to share with you all based kind of on our last in-person meeting, some feedback that we heard from the community outreach group. The idea that you all would like to have some collateral, some materials, resources to kind of have on hand specifically about the Portside Community Steering Committee to share with people when you're speaking with them about the committee or out in the neighborhood. So based on that information, I developed some kind of preliminary possible resources to share, and we'd love to get your feedback, as this is kind of just a draft starting point of sometimes it's helpful just kind of see something out there and then get feedback and go back to the drawing board and rework it. So we'd really like this to be collaborative, but having something to kind of throw out there can be helpful. So we've developed, and apologies in advance, these are translated by Google Translate into Spanish, and just an attempt to try and translate quickly. The final iterations will be done with professional translation services. So don't worry about too much on the actual verbiage, just more about the content, and the look and the feel is kind of what we want to get feedback on. So we're going to be sharing 3 different pieces of possible outreach materials: a door hanger, a flyer, and a poster. And I'll go into greater detail one by one. So first here we have this idea of a door hanger. It's something that if you were going door to door and trying to talk to people in the community about kind of air quality, and also the steering committee, about possibly joining the steering committee if they were not home, you would be able to leave this on their door as a door hanger. One side would be English, one side would be Spanish. It gives people general information on kind of air quality in the area, ways to improve it, one of which is joining the Portside Community Steering Committee, and then kind of directs you how to join the committee. There's a QR code, there's an email, and information directing you to the Portside landing page. So kind of based on, I'll let you guys take a minute to digest this for a second, because I know it's being a lot thrown on you at you, but as you think about it, kind of content wise, look and feel wise, do you have any initial thoughts? Is this something that you think would catch people's eye in a good way? Is there anything that you feel, content that you'd wish to convey that isn't there, or something that you don't think needs to be there? Just some guiding questions. And I see some hands up, or I did for a second.
Mariela?
Hi. So my only comment would be that, you know, I get what we are trying to do here with like inviting people to check out you know, the landing page and all that, but it feels like maybe we could, I know it sounds cheesy, but maybe, you know, like put a line like saying join us or something like that, that is kind of like letting people know what we are trying to do with this door hanger. I don't know, like the image in the background, it seems very distracting. I love images, but I don't know, it seems like there's a lot of information in there. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
A comment from Vanessa in the chat. I think it's a little busy and not easy to read on the bottom portion. Nick?
Hey, Lauren. Thanks for working on this. This is awesome. Exciting stuff. One thing that has kind of repeated itself over and over again when we're working with community members and talking to them about like the air quality concerns that they can report. Sometimes it's kind of hard for folks to kind of think out what that means, like what is an air quality concern. And so maybe like in brackets, like adding like odors or dust or just some kind of like primers, idling trucks. Like, I don't know, just some examples that folks can kind of, it could prime them in their reporting.
Yeah. Thank you. Really like tangible examples. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Great. I'm just flagging that it sounds like interpretation might not be coming through. Let the interpreters, please. I think both of you might be muted.
No oigo la interpretación, Chuy.
Sí, te puedo escuchar, Vicky. Thank you.
En este momento sí. Pues espero que tengan cuidado porque no estamos entendiendo. Al menos yo no estoy entendiendo la junta. Y es muy importante para mí. Ahora sí.
Okay, I think we can continue.
Okay.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so I will go to the
Okay,
next
Chuy, si
one.
escucha ahorita, a ver si.
I have a comment.
Thank you. Janet?
I think the why is very important. Why should community members get involved? Some community members understand that their communities are some of the most highly polluted communities in the state. I think the sense of urgency needs to be presented in a factual way, in one sentence, possibly in the beginning, like, hey, we need your involvement. You live in one of the most polluted cities or areas in the state. And so I think that needs to be presented. You know, there's a lot of really joyful presentation here, and the reality of what we're dealing with is not. So making sure, you know, presenting the importance of involvement. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, that's a great point. And I think trying to balance that in a way, and also thinking about, which is something I didn't share, is having these 3 different and more can be created, by the way, too, if you feel you need more. These 3 different resources will work together, kind of like layer on top of each other. So they're different sizes. Some are smaller and some are bigger. And so the smaller ones, we don't have as much verbiage. This next one is a little bit bigger, so we have a little bit more space. We can get a little bit more in detail. And this is something, a flyer. So if you were talking to somebody, you could hand it to them, or you could conceivably leave it at somebody's door as well. That's inviting people to join the steering committee. The door hanger is a little bit smaller, but I can see that we might need to switch the focus to be less about general resources and more about joining the steering committee, if that is what is the most important for your needs when you're going out and talking with people. I think that we could definitely change the focus. So this one is sort of the same questions of content wise, this one is more general, kind of more of an introduction to what the CSC is, when we meet, how to join. And then, so if there's anything that you see kind of missing that you would want to help to have on here when you're talking to somebody, to leave with them as a flyer, as kind of a follow-up, as next steps.
Okay. I know Maritza had her hand raised, so feel free to hop in, Maritza, with any feedback. I saw that Janice also had a great suggestion around getting community artists involved and any content development.
Yeah, we love that idea, and that's something that's on our wish list. This is kind of like what can we do now right away, just to get things started. And then artists are something we would probably have to work with down the line in the future as we have a little more support and funding, but that is a huge wish of ours as well. And I love that idea. Thank you. And if you have people that in the community that you, as far as involved in the artistic community, please feel free to share their information.
Hey, Lauren, I kind of had a comment from something that please. Sorry, my daughter loves to talk as soon as I have to talk in the meeting as well.
I understand. I feel ya.
When you commented something on not having that much space on the first, I'm kind of going back to the leave it door hanger. Yeah. I totally get that, and I think that that's why actually it's pretty important, to Janice's point of like why this is important, like having community members know that this is, we live in a polluted community. Mm-hmm. I envision that this most likely would be left behind when no contact is made. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people might not even know really who APCD is to that extent, or how they can help in any way. So all of these resources are great, but I think that that's all, like that's step 2. Like the step 1 is, this is who we are. You are a community member that has a lot of valuable input, and that is why you should be in the steering committee, because at least in personal experience, this is a very empowering space that most community members don't always have the privilege to be in terms of other government agencies or talking to different entities like that. And it can be intimidating if you don't have any kind of background of talking under air quality. But like to Nick's point, air quality has a lot of different layers that we might not really fully understand, and we live it and we know what it is and we experience it, but we might not have that same vernacular or that like feeling empowered to be able to make those, like voice that. So to make it very known that this is the space that you need to be in because you are the most experienced in it, is I think what needs to be conveyed, at least on this one, because of the fact that we might not actually, like, we're just leaving it on someone's door. So how do you make it most impact, or for them to actually care?
Right. Okay. I love that. I think that's super helpful. Thank you. And it makes sense that would be the function of this. And something kind of a follow-up to that is, as I think about it, being a community member of Logan Heights, and if I guess kind of like balancing the severity of the message and like the possible depressing aspect of it with like an empowering aspect, is kind of what we were trying to do with like the 5 things you can do about it. I can see that that's kind of like a bit too much here. But if you all had feedback in terms of like, if we were going to give people some sort of action they can take, so people don't just, you know, I feel like if I were to get it and just see, oh, air quality is really bad here, and like I can join the steering committee, but like maybe I couldn't join the steering committee for whatever reason, you know, schedule wise, or who knows, disability wise, like wanting to be able to do something. And if you guys have any ideas on if there's something like some positive messaging we could balance it with, which would be, you know, join the CSC, but then also, you know, something else, or like scan this code to learn about more resources or more ways to get involved, or, you know, some sort of feedback as you're thinking about like picking this up off your door, and what you would want to know as a community member.
Or get to know your community representatives or your community members that are a part of it. So while they might not be able to, most of us are accessible to them to help bring their voice to the table when they can't be there.
I get what you're saying, Lauren, and that makes way more sense. So thank you for putting that into context. The first thing that to the top of my head is if there's a way to have like a community member quote or something. I mean, I know that in recent events, there was community members that were very vocal and advocated for their own well-being against a biofuel company in the community, and they attended APCD meetings and they continuously reported. So I think that there's already plenty of experience with certain community members of that maybe you know, one sentence quote or something of how they felt empowered to be able to do that would then tie into, because you're right, not everyone has the space to join this steering committee for various reasons, and having that be an option as well as these other resources. But I think that just like being able to connect that in, as you know, with a quote from a community member or something, that like these aren't just resources that are out there that can be used, but are being used, and like to encourage more people to use it because it is effective.
Thank you. So I'm furiously trying to take notes. Okay, thank you so much. That's really wonderful. I know in the interest of time, Chewy, I don't know how much time we have left, because there's a flyer, and then there's also this idea of having a poster. We could leave places like the library, you know, coffee shops, any place of your choosing. This again goes into kind of like, it's a little bit more, it has a little bit of the why, a little bit of, you know, how we can make our air quality better, including joining the steering committee, and then links to more resources. But this would be also something that you wouldn't be talking with somebody about. It'd be something that would be up on a wall that people are seeing, that we would hope would prompt them to look into more, possibly joining the CSC or getting involved in some way. If you all have any quick, like instant gut reactions or ideas on this one, we have a little bit more space to work with here. It's a bit larger, probably like an 18 by 24 size.
You want to lift Sylvia's comment real quick, just suggesting that it's answer or focus on the why, what, and who, similar to other feedback we've been hearing.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you. We'll be working with, I'll be reaching out to the community outreach group to further hone in on this, but thank you all. This has been super, super helpful, and I appreciate your feedback. I look forward to getting these made.
Great. And yeah, we'll be sure to forward you any other chats.
Yeah, please do. And any, you know, I know for me, I always have to think on things for a minute. So please, if anything comes up, feel free to reach out to me directly too. If everybody has my email, I'll put it in the chat.
Great, that'd be helpful. Nick, just wanted to see if you wanted
Yeah, can I chime in really quick before Lauren jumps off? Lauren, as you were talking about the 5 ways to improve air quality in the port side, I was thinking a little bit about some of like the businesses in the port side and how that's like an audience that we might be able to reach. We have incentive funds to try to transition a lot of their fleets. And so I think it would be interesting to make like a tailored flyer to kind of put the onuses on local businesses operating in Barrio Logan and West National City to say, hey, like you have a role in this too. There's the ZE truck pilot program that you can be taking advantage of, and maybe putting a link to some of those resources that APCD offers to folks. So yeah, just something to think about.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is California Air Resources Board. Andrea, I'll hand it over to you. Hi, Audrey. I think you might be on mute.
Better, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm Audrey O'Dwar. I'm from the California Air Resources Board. I am part of the Community Air Protection Program, and tonight I'll be presenting an update on the state budget. Next slide, please. Many of you might have already heard about some of the challenges that are facing the state budget this upcoming year. Specifically, it's been reported that the state budget deficit for the upcoming year is anywhere from $38 to $73 billion. So this means that the Community Air Protection Program is anticipating some budget cuts that have already been proposed and are reported in the governor's January 10th budget. I'll go into the details of what those budget cuts mean for our program shortly. But first, I'll share that earlier this month, the governor proposed some early actions to help reduce that budget deficit and close the gap by about $17.3 billion. That $17.3 billion plan included some cuts to state programs, internal borrowing, funding delays, and shifts for savings. More recently, on Monday, April 15th, this past tax day, the legislature passed AB 106, or the Early Action Plan, to provide some of those early actions for tackling a part of that funding gap before the regular budget process later this spring. So we anticipate that there will be some more proposals to further balance out that budget in the governor's May revised budget. But what I want to draw your attention to now is how all of this is going to impact funding for the Community Air Protection Program. Next slide, please. So if you look at the bottom right of this table, you'll see that the proposed total funding amount for the Community Air Protection Program this upcoming year is about $250 million, which is $50 million less than last year. So I'll break down what that $250 million means for the program. The total $250 million is coming from 3 different funding pots, which are the middle 3 columns on this table. Those are implementation funds, community air protection incentives or CAP incentives, and technical assistance, or what we call the community air grants. Implementation funds, which are described in the second column of this table, are given to and managed by the air districts for things like staffing, interpretation and facilitation services, stipends for CSC members, developing the SERP and the camp, outreach, and equipment. So $50 million is being proposed for implementation funds this year for 35 air districts, and this is in comparison to $60 million from last year, which is a reduction of $10 million. In the next column, we have CAP incentives, which are also given to and managed by the air districts to develop and support community identified projects, clean technology, and infrastructure projects. $195 million is being proposed for this upcoming year, again for the 35 air districts, which is down from $240 million last year. So this is a $45 million reduction. Lastly, in the next column, we have the community air grants funding, which is given to CARB so that we can provide grants to community-based nonprofit organizations and California Native American tribes to participate in the AB 617 Community Air Protection Program. These grants focus on community outreach and engagement in the program, community education projects, and projects for monitoring, data collection, and analysis. This year, $5 million is being proposed for the community air grants, which is a reduction from last year's $6 million. I'll also point out that before last year, the community air grants typically received $10 million.
Audrey, can you speak a little slower
Yes.
for our interpreter?
Yes, sorry about that. Is there anything that I should repeat for now?
I wasn't on the interpretation channel, but I think we're okay for now.
Okay, gotcha. Because of the reductions in these 3 different pots and then the total funding for the Community Air Protection Program, we're anticipating that there might be some challenges with that $250 million that's been proposed overall for the program. So we're going to have to think creatively about how we can provide the same level of support to the program with fewer funding resources that we've seen here in this table and that I've talked a little bit about tonight. And I'd like to reiterate that there might be some more updates in the governor's May revised budget, which is coming out next month. So we'll just stay tuned for that and provide any necessary updates later. So I hope this was helpful, and I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. I think we have time for a couple of questions before the next budget presentation. John?
Yes, I'd like to get a little more information on the community grants and whatnot. We're getting ready, hopefully, to start a project here at our facility on Logan Avenue that would actually test the air quality here on the street, both from, if you will, from the west of us and from the east of us. And we're basically wanting to get the hardware. We already got a commitment from a company to provide the filter systems, which we believe will remove approximately up to about 92% of all the particulate matter. And so we would like to get some assistance in actually installing that equipment. We've got some companies that are willing to help, but once again, they're not able to put up all the money. And I don't think we're talking about a lot of money at all, to be quite honest with you. And we've got several members in the community that have showed some interest. And like I said, for me as a retired school teacher, I know that 60% of the population are visual learners. Well, when they can see an actual visual, okay, of what particulate matter looks like and what's actually being ingested, okay, it makes all the difference in the world. And all of a sudden people are going, oh my God. And I would love for us to get together. And there's several of us, like I said, working on this project. And if you can get back with us, I would appreciate it. We're the Good Neighbor Project San Diego, right on Logan Avenue.
Okay, thank you, John, for your questions. That's the Good Neighbor Project. And I know that Melinda is present from CARB tonight. I think she might have responded in the chat. She works more closely with the community air grants. It looks like there's a link in there, and we can get in touch with you, Melinda and I, with more information if that would be helpful for you.
It would be, and please do so as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
We want to get an early start on this.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Audrey and Melinda. Any other comments? I do see a comment from Josephine around the budget. Josephine stated that she does not appreciate the statement. See how we can continue doing what we are doing with the cuts. There is a terrible way to operate. It places a tremendous strain on staff. Any other comments on or questions for the state budget?
Yeah, can we refocus it? I really got distracted by John. What is the ask? Can we refocus the ask here? Thank you.
This is just an update on the state budget. There's not an ask yet. There's a different item on that.
Yes, to reiterate what Shui mentioned, we're just providing an update on the budget from CARB side, and I think the next agenda item should be a budget update from APCD to complement this.
I think we can move on to the air districts budget presentation. Stephanie?
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to present this evening. My name is Stephanie Nicholas, Chief of Support Services Division, and today I'm just going to present on the proposed and recommended fiscal year 24-25 budget. Next slide, please. So again, thank you for attending tonight. I wanted to start out by providing an overview of the agenda and what to expect for the information presented tonight. So during this presentation, I'm going to provide a reminder of the district's goals and objectives, a look at the 24-25 recommended budget, our fund balance usage, staffing, Office of Environmental Justice budget, and then going to finish by providing some upcoming dates related to the budget process. Next slide, please. So our goals and objectives remain the same. As part of the recommended budget, we will continue to expand upon our programs to promote our goals of air quality, public health, environmental justice and equity, public engagement and transparency, and operational excellence. These goals and objectives were weaved into the budget development process to advance the district's vision of clean air for all and our mission to improve air quality to protect public health and the environment. Next slide, please. So just a few of the high-level highlights of the recommended budget include a total revenue and expenditures for fiscal year 24-25 of $120.2 million. This includes $60 million in pass-through grant funds to incentivize projects that accelerate air quality and public health improvements, including $34 million specifically for projects benefiting disadvantaged communities. $1 million in EPA grant funding to expand engagement with multiple communities throughout the region in air quality awareness, monitoring, planning, and advocacy. Funding for additional funding for additional air quality monitoring sites. And then also a reduced reliance on the use of fund balance to fund district operations and one-time projects. And I'll get into the definitions of some of those in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the San Diego County Air Pollution Control District is recommending a $120.2 million balanced budget for the upcoming fiscal year 2024-25. A detailed breakdown of our budget can be found on our district's website, and I'll put that in the chat when I'm done. The budget includes an operating budget of $41.9 million, and then a special revenue fund budget of $78.3 million, and those two buckets equal that 120.2. The operating budget is strictly for the operations of the Air Pollution Control District and does not include the budget amounts for special revenue funds, which is things like pass-through grants to pay for incentives. The operating budget plans for revenue and expenditures to run the main programs of the district, such as administrative services, monitoring and source testing, compliance, engineering, and mobile incentives and rule development. The largest chunk of the recommended budget is $60 million, as I mentioned before, or 46.5% of the total budget for pass-through grants to incentivize projects that accelerate air quality and public health. And just to reiterate, $34 million of that, that includes $34 million in AB 617 funding specifically for projects benefiting disadvantaged communities. The second largest expenditures in the budget is $29.5 million, or 22.9%. For the salaries and benefits, which moving forward I'll refer to as S&B of the SDAPCD's recommended 178 staff positions, including that money includes negotiated labor agreement increases, benefits, health insurance, retirement workers' comp, things like that, as well as the request for one new staff position. We have 17.6 million, or 13.7% of the budget is for what we call operating transfers out. It's kind of a weird name, but what it reflects is the expenditure side of transferring money between district funds. So I mentioned before the operating fund versus special revenue funds. So this accounts for the reimbursement or the transfer of money between any and all special revenue funds like AB 617 or DMV, Moyer, and others to our operating fund to cover our overhead costs. So an example of this would be the transferring of the cost that we incur related to AB 617, such as administrative costs for staff to monitor and measure air pollutants and improve air quality in communities that are disproportionately impacted. So moving that money to the operating fund. 15.2 million, or 11.8% of the budget, is for what we call services and supplies, or S&S. This includes the district's the cost the district is responsible outside of salaries and benefits, such as fleet, IT, building maintenance, office equipment, educational material, translation services, things like that. And then this also includes funding for the monitoring sensors that are planned in communities throughout the region in fiscal year 24-25. Next slide, please. So as noted before, the budget is balanced. So I just talked about the expenditure, so the cost. Now we'll talk about the revenue. So we are proposing to spend 120.2 million, and we are projecting and recommending 120.2 million in revenue. So that same amount. The largest source of district revenue is what's called intergovernmental revenue of 84.7, or 70% of all revenue. So this revenue, in other terms, is basically funding we get from state and federal funds, most of which, as I mentioned before, is for pass-through funding for projects to improve air quality and public health in communities throughout the region. And then a small portion of the grant funds are used to help offset some of the district costs to implement various clean air programs and are not passed through as incentives. Grant agreements usually dictate how we can be reimbursed for work done under the grant agreements. Another primary source of revenue is what's called other financing sources. So before I talked about operating transfers out on the spending side, on the revenue side, it's the same thing. It's called other financing sources. So it's the revenue that offsets the transfer of money. One example of this would be transferring grant monies allocated for administration to recover the staff and overhead costs to implement and oversee the AB 617 program. And then we have 11.4 million, or 10% of our revenue comes from the category called license, permits, and franchises. What this means is that's revenue derived from permit application fees, permit renewal fees, and other fees paid by our customers directly for district services. This fee-related revenue can only be used to cover the cost of the services provided by the district to our permit holders. Next slide, please. So this slide shows our fund balance, and fund balance, I kind of mentioned that term earlier. It should be thought of as a savings account with finite resources. So if you're not putting money into it, but taking money out, once that money is spent, it's gone. So we have 5 different buckets of savings accounts or fund balance accounts here at the district. And I'll go over the bars and the colors here in a moment, but just want to kind of explain what the different buckets are. So we have an operations general fund, which is a discretionary savings account that can be used for one-time projects. In the past several years, we've had to use this fund to cover revenue shortfalls in our operating budget. But for the first time in several years, we are not proposing to use these funds to cover revenue shortfalls. Now, with that being said, what we heard before, the budget is built on projections. So if we do not realize the revenue projections that we anticipate, we may need to tap into this operations general fund to cover any potential revenue gaps, but we really hope we don't have to do that. The next bucket is called operating reserves. This is a committed account, meaning we can only use this money with governing board approval, and it's for a very specific purpose. So this bucket is set aside to maintain 2 months of operating expenditures in the case of unforeseen economic shortfalls. The next bucket is it's facilities and fleet. Again, this is a committed account, so it can only be used with governing board approval and is specifically for facilities and fleet improvements and or replacements as necessary. The fourth one is financial and data management systems replacement and upgrades. Again, a committed account can only be used with governing board approval. And this is used for financial or data management system upgrades or replacements as necessary. And then lastly, we have our DMV fund, which is used to support the district's mobile source related programs, such as funding for incentive projects that directly reduce emissions from vehicles and equipment. And so now to get to the chart itself, the blue bar represents the current balance of the fund, and then the green bar represents the additions or subtractions to the fund. So as part of the recommended fiscal year 24-25 budget, we are recommending to remove $900,000 from the operations general fund and redistribute it to the other committed funds. So you'll see on the chart, the dashed line at 0 and that green portion of the bar under that in the farthest to the left column is showing the removal of $900,000 from that account. And then we are proposing to redistribute that to 3 other accounts. And the allocation of that $900,000 would be $350,000 to our operating reserves, just to ensure that we have our 2 months worth of operating reserves. And that would leave a total projected balance in the operating reserves of $5.2 million. We would reallocate $300,000 to our facilities, fleet and facilities fund for a total balance of $1 million. And then the last $250,000 to our financial and data management systems for a total balance of $3 million. One thing I did forget to mention is in that operations general fund, once we take that $900,000 and reallocate it, it would leave a balance there of just under $6.4 million. And then lastly, we have our DMV fund, and we are not proposing any changes to that fund as part of the recommended budget. Next slide, please. So as part of the 24-25 recommended budget to ensure that critical services are provided and to meet district goals and objectives, we are recommending the addition of 1 staff position. We're recommending 1 air pollution control aide to be added to the monitoring division to support the expansion of the BioWatch program to include Camp Pendleton. This position will be funded 100% by the Federal Department of Homeland Security BioWatch grant. For budgetary purposes on this chart, you're going to see a reduction in monitoring staff of 5. However, this is not a true reduction. It's a movement of 6 existing staff positions for budgetary purposes only from 1 budgetary unit monitoring to another on the Office of Environmental Justice. Add to that addition of the 1 air pollution control aide that we are recommending to add that I just talked about, and it's a net reduction in budgetary staffing of 5 positions in the monitoring. So not an actual reduction in staffing, just a movement of staffing. Additionally, the increased work of SDAPCD in local environmental justice communities has enhanced the work of the Office of Environmental Justice, which for budgeting purposes was previously incorporated into the program budgets for both administration and monitoring. But we moved the cost there for budgeting purposes and transparency. We kind of moved the funding and reallocated it to a brand new budgetary unit called Office of Environmental Justice. And then we would transfer 3 existing staff positions from administration for program management, outreach, engagement, and more, which I'll cover on the next slide. And then the 6 staff positions moving from monitoring, but those positions are specifically for community air monitoring only. Next slide, please. So environmental justice is incorporated into all that we do as an organization, from processing of grant payments to compliance, providing education and outreach, to ensuring regulated entities understand how to comply with air quality regulations. The budgetary unit of Office of Environmental Justice, as noted on the previous slide, is being recommended with 3 dedicated staff members, but that's no change. That's what we have today. The cost there is roughly $500,000 for those staff positions, and those positions are going to continue to focus specifically on things like the implementation of the Office of Environmental Justice framework, cultivating environmental justice partnerships, implementation of the International Border and Portside CERPs, community outreach and education, and the San Diego-Tijuana Air Quality Task Force creation. Also included, Also included in the budget for the Office of Environmental Justice are services and supplies, S&S, such as community-based organization and community stipends, census-based monitors, interpretation and translation, facilitation, and consultants, and the preparation and distribution of educational materials. Next slide, please. The district's environmental justice program has two main funding sources. We have our government to government, or what we call G2G grant, which comes from the EPA, and then state funding from CARB. These funding sources cover work being done by several budgetary units to support environmental justice efforts, including the Office of Environmental Justice Monitoring, mobile incentives, and it incorporates a district-wide overhead in there too. And so the G2G grant is a 2-year grant for a total of $1 million. This means we budget that full $1 million in fiscal year 24-25. However, the money is intended to last through fiscal year 25-26. So whatever is not spent in the upcoming fiscal year 24-25 would be carried forward to the fiscal year 2025-26 budget. So with that funding, it will pay for staff salary and benefits, services and supplies, including the purchase and distribution of sensor-based monitors, indoor air purifiers, and indoor air quality monitors, as well as outreach, education, and engagement. We're also, as part of that $1 million, recommending spending $380,000 for community-based organizations, outreach, project recruitment, and program implementation activities. And then in terms of state funding from CARB, there are two buckets. There's the AB 617 funding, the implementation and the incentive grant funding. So the recommended $4.4 million for the AB 617 implementation grant is comprised of $2.3 million in ongoing grant funding. I say ongoing, but it is evaluated at the state level annually. And then another $2.1 million of one-time funding, meaning we got the money as a one-time allocation, and once it's gone, there is no ongoing revenue identified. This funding is for both AB 617 environmental justice communities. So it's not like there's some for one community and some for another. This covers both communities, in addition to supporting and cultivating relationships with other communities impacted by environmental harms, but who don't currently have a SERP or associated funding. And then lastly, there is just under $36 million for the AB 617 incentive grants, so those pass-through grants. Most of this funding, that $34 million, is pass-through grants to incentivize projects that accelerate air quality and public health improvements, specifically for projects benefiting disadvantaged communities. Next slide, please. So that's an overview of what we are recommending for the fiscal year 2024-25 budget. I appreciate you taking the time and allowing me to share a little bit of information. Just some more information about next steps and how to get involved. The recommended budget was released on our website on April 9th. The second to the last dot point there, budget information, that's the URL where you can find the a more detailed budget document, several detailed budget documents. And then on May 9th at 5 p.m., we will present the recommended budget to the governing board. And then on June 13th, budget deliberations by the governing board will take place. And if you would like to provide feedback regarding our budget, you can send an email to the address on the screen, which is APCD Fiscal, that's FISCAL, at SDAPCD.org. And with that, I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Any questions related to the Air District's budget? Please raise your hand. And maybe to get started, I did see a comment from Josephine in the chat, a movement of staff that strains the EJ office. I think this was in response to the staffing table slide. Stephanie, can you confirm that's a correct assessment?
There's no change in staffing. The staffing is the same. It was just the staffing there. Thank you for that. The staffing was in different budgetary units. That first column program is the budgetary units. So we're just moving the staff for budget purposes so that we can kind of put all of the Office of Environmental Justice AB 617 funding together. No change in staffing numbers. It's still the 3 staff that we have today, still being included in the budget for next year.
Hi, thank you, Stephanie, for the presentation. I had a couple questions, actually. One question is, are the budget deficits at the state level impacting APCD's budget at all?
So not yet, but I kind of alluded to, in the presentation, we budget based on projections. And so those are the projections we have as of when we built the budget. If there's any changes at the state level in the funding for us, it could and will impact us. And that's where I kind of talked about where we have some reserve money if needed, but we watch that closely throughout the year and adjust as necessary. But we'll be watching that revised budget as well next month.
Got it. And then a follow-up question for the AB 617 funding, the $34 million, is that encumbered funds already, or is that money ready to be allocated to programs? I just want to get a sense of how that AB 617 budget is focused.
Yeah, so it's not encumbered yet. So encumbered would mean we have the money today. We project to have that money as of the start of next fiscal year, which is July 1. So what I'm presenting is what would be in effect from July 1 of this year through June 30 of 2025. Had to remember the years there for a second. So it's what we anticipate based on the funding we anticipate getting from the state. That's how much we anticipate setting directly aside for the AB 617 incentive grants.
Oh,
Does that
okay.
answer
So
your question?
I think so, but so there's an existing pot of AB 617 money in your budget today,
Correct.
and then this would be new.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll keep that in mind and may follow up later. Thank you.
Can I just make a quick clarification, just to going back to Phil's question regarding impacts at the state level? Yes, like Stephanie said, we haven't seen those impacts yet for the cuts. However, I think it's important to nuance it with the fact that the current funding for AB 617, it's not sufficient at the state level. I think it's important to highlight and to keep that in mind, that even the current funding level is a challenge. So all of the districts and CARB have worked to find different ways to increase that funding, and we've worked with the state legislature to support continuous funding for this program, because that's definitely important, especially as we added a second community. The international border community just a couple of years ago. Our funding for AB 617 didn't increase, right? It's still the same funding level. So I just wanted to caveat that with that information. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to hand it over to Maritza, followed by Nick. You still have your hand raised. Maritza?
Thank you. I just had a question on the money that's being transferred out of the general funds. Is there any point of concern we should have that money is being taken out of there? Does that affect that general funds negatively, or what exactly does the general funds go towards typically?
So the general fund, like I mentioned, is, in the past several years, we've unfortunately had to use it to cover some of our operating costs, just because some of the funding sources we have are not sufficient to cover some of our costs. So we have had to use that to cover, some of our operating costs, not all of them, some. We are projecting not having to do that, so stabilizing a bit there. With it's hard to say what the effect will be on the operating fund the general fund. Just kind of, it depends on how revenue comes in, both, from grants, state, federal, from our permit holders, things like that. Depending on if those come in short, we may have to pull from that general fund again. The general fund should not be used as an ongoing revenue source because it's finite. Once you use it, it goes away unless you're putting money into it. So something that we watch very closely throughout the year, and really it's kind of what we see as a big win for us in our projection for next year, not having to use it at this time.
Question, Maritza. Nick, do you still have a question?
No, it was answered already, Chewy. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the Air District budget? Hearing none, let's move on to our next item.
Chewy, before we move on, can we just confirm that interpretation is working?
Thank you. Can the interpreter please test their mic out? And Anna, if you can confirm.
Sí.
Thank you. Great. This time would like to hand it over to Nick at EHC to present an overview of a proposed letter that was sent out to CSC members last week. Nick?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Chewy. Yeah, so I guess, this is a budget heavy CSC meeting today, but I think the letter that we sent out last week, I think builds off of the presentation from the CARB representative earlier. So as they were saying, there is a huge budget deficit in the state of California. I think it's like $73 billion. And that means that there are programs, clean air programs that are potentially on the chopping block. And so we drafted this letter as kind of a general support and call to the governor to make sure that CAT funding remains in the budget revise that is coming up. And so on there, we emphasize how important the work of the CSC has been over these past several years. We talked how important guaranteeing incentive funding for the electrification of heavy duty trucks and other polluting equipment is. And yeah, we think it would be a powerful statement as a Portside CSC, representatives of one of California's most pollution burdened neighborhood, to say, hey, Governor, we need to guarantee these funds. So yeah, we would appreciate the support from the community and voting guests to support this letter.
Anna has added the links to the English and Spanish version of the letters. If folks wanted to take a look at it. It was also sent a week ago for charter requirements. So yeah, would like to open it up to the committee for discussion and potential action. Stephanie, Dr. Yoon?
Hi, yeah. So I definitely support keeping and maintaining the funding that we need to help out with clean air for our community. I think my only suggestion, and I think the references that were used for data included in the letter could be beefed up just a little bit. I noticed like the first reference was actually an opinion piece in the San Diego Union Tribune, which I think is great for kind of getting the personal stories out there, which are also important. But I think that it was used as a reference for how the air quality continues to be poor in that community, and so I think adding a link or reference to something like CalEnviroscreen or something where somebody can get more actual scientific data for those quotes, I think would just make it a stronger letter.
Any other comments from the team? Phil?
Sure. Yeah. And thanks, Nick, for drafting this letter and bringing it to our attention. I agree with Stephanie. Actually, I noticed that too, that some of the links I think could be beefed up, and referencing to some of the air quality strategies or even the SERP itself, I think for that first reference could, point to the fact that the Portside community and the border community suffer air pollution. I think there was a second reference, footnote number 2, that the link didn't seem to work. I think it was probably an internal drive somewhere, so it's not like we couldn't look at it to check on it. Question for anybody that might be able to answer it. Nick, you might be able to. I noticed there was a section in there on money for like drayage trucks, et cetera. Do you know how much that is proposed to be reduced in the budget? Or are you just saying, hey, look, let's not reduce it at all. Let's keep the funding high?
I think it was more just a general statement of funding. Yeah. Phil, I might be able to. I'd have to look back on some notes and find the specific point, but yeah, I think the general ask is to maintain funding and to continue funding the electrification of heavy duty trucks and drayage trucks.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think you're correct there, and it is really difficult to look through the budget and try to find numbers. But I'll just make one more comment. I mean, we're in this still the early adoption phase of a lot of these electric pieces of equipment, including trucks, and with the state regulatory framework requiring folks to adopt these vehicles, they can't do it without incentives. I think we all know that. And so I agree with Nick and the focus of the letter to try to preserve those budgets as much as we can. If the budget is reduced, ultimately, we won't see an expeditious transition to these vehicles at a time when they're regulatorily going to be required to do it. And so they're put in a really tough position to try to get into these vehicles with more money out of their own pocket, which may not be possible. So thanks, Nick. I appreciate this.
Well, Jack?
Thanks, Chewy. I wanted to go back to something that Phil mentioned, which is at page 2, footnote 2. We can't read that. I just wondered what that is, and can you make that available? That link doesn't go anywhere as private server or something. I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I think that might have been an oversight on my end. So that link is actually a link that's on the APCD website. It's about the ISR framework that they posted, I think, in June of 2023, the indirect source rule framework. And on that document, they had some really great data points about the contribution of pollution from heavy duty trucks in the county. And so I felt like, I mean, as we're making a call to preserve funding for incentives for heavy duty truck transition, it kind of gives like the background data as to why it's so important to make sure that funding continues moving forward, because there's a lot pollution that's caused by heavy duty trucks in the county.
Well, but why is that link on why can't we click on that link and have and see what's being referred to there, see what that information is you're talking about? Or anybody else that reads it, you know,
Yeah.
reads the letter down the line.
Yeah, I think that link is just not working. I can add that to the chat so that you all can have this here, and I think that's going to need to be an amendment that we do to the letter, Chewy, because I think as Jack and Phil mentioned, if the folks that are receiving this letter can't reference it, it does no one good. So I'll make sure to add that to the chat so that you have that.
Thank you.
You depends what link you use off of the APCD website. Sometimes it just doesn't work, especially when it's a specific document out of an agenda. So I think, yeah, Nick, you'll just need to be careful about which link you pull out. Tim?
Thanks, and thanks, Nick, for drafting the letter. I want to kind of just like piggyback on Jack's point there that the source of the information for the references to, I think it was the oxides of nitrogen and the health effects and things like that. I would, not knowing exactly, the source material, I would hope that, similar information is just available in the SERP, the Portside SERP, and that can be cited directly. I think it just makes it a little bit cleaner from a messaging perspective to be referencing the SERP as the source of the information rather than linking to the indirect source rule that's being proposed, just because that's an ongoing thing and related to SERP, but not the same thing. So if the same information is available in the SERP, I would recommend referencing that as the source material.
Thanks, Tim. I think that's a great recommendation.
And is the link not working for folks? It looks like it worked on my end.
The one that Nick just put in the chat?
Yes.
Yeah, that works.
We have a question from Derek, one of our attendees in the public. When will this letter be available to public advocates? And is there an ask from local CBOs to sign on? The current proposed action is, so this is a letter for the steering committee to consider and submit as an entity itself. I think it'll be up to the committee whether they want to open it up to a sign-on type of letter. But currently my understanding is this is for the CSC to consider and for the CSC to submit. Great. Seeing another comment from Phil. One more thing on page 2, not sure if NOx is a precursor to pollution. Wondering if someone from the APC monitoring team would verify this factoid.
Hey, Chewy, I should be able to answer this one. Yeah, NOx is most definitely a precursor to particulate pollution. As NOx ages and reacts, you can form nitrates from that, and nitrates is a common component of particulate matter.
Right. Great. So I'm hearing a few edits based on comments, particularly related to references and the footnotes, particularly updating the second link that doesn't currently work, updating one of the sources for data that potentially using the third document or cow and virus screen for any references regarding pollution in the Portside community and strategies and actions that the steering committee approved via this term.
Chewy, you're breaking up. I'm sorry, I couldn't understand about the last 30 seconds there.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was just summarizing the feedback I was hearing in terms of updating links and sources, particularly using the Portside SERP for any references regarding the SERP and potentially air quality conditions, the Portside community, and the second link that isn't currently working, which is referencing the ISR framework document from the Air District.
I just had another comment. I really appreciate Nick putting this letter together because I think it's essential that the governor's office hear from every steering committee around the state. There's no way anybody's going to be able to continue doing what has been being done with less budget, unless it's been a wasteful process and they didn't need all the money in the first place. And I don't think that's the case at all. So there's going to be cuts. There's going to be reductions in our ability to move forward with our SERP and so forth, given this budget fiasco and pending budget cuts. So I think it's essential that Governor hears from our steering committee. I would just like, I guess I'm just a little uncomfortable referencing that framework document from last June when we all noted that, what has been noted several times since then is questions over the need to do things like define warehouses, perhaps different from the real estate research firm that was used to assemble that document, and which has one definition of warehouse, which happens to be different than what South Coast used in their definition. So I just am uncomfortable trying to reference that document. I think there's other places we could reference, as was noted, as Phil noted, that would be from the SERP. Or I'm sorry, not Phil. I know. I'm sorry. that didn't come from the. That came from the SERP, which is certainly a document we all have agreed and supported.
Yeah, and just I guess a process question: is it possible for CSC to approve the document in substantially this format, but maybe with minor changes to the links and not have to bring it back for another vote later? Just recognizing that budget time is time sensitive, and so if folks are comfortable, I would suggest that we approve this in substantially the same format, and trusting Nick or whoever to make these minor adjustments as suggested today.
Procedurally, that is definitely sound, Tim.
I'm open to that, Chewy, to making those edits. I'm hearing, changing some of the links, making sure that we're referencing the SERP instead of the ISR framework document, and guaranteeing that the links are functional to whoever's receiving.
Great. Maybe Tim, do you feel comfortable making that motion?
Sure, I'll make that motion that we approve this in substantially the same format.
I second that
I would
motion.
second Tim's motion.
Yeah.
Great. Before we go to a roll call vote, Andrea, see question or hand raise?
I apologize for jumping in at the last minute. Just a couple of items. I could help work with Tim if that's appropriate, but I think it would be important to mention the Otay Mesa border crossing in addition to the Tijuana, because it is the second busiest commercial crossing and that's where the trucks cross. In the upfront in the letter, that's one item that I would add. And the other is to begin the letter expressing gratitude to the governor for his work on, this, that, and the other thing. A thank you can go a really long way. And he's been a critical advocate for the region. So just a couple of suggestions. Thanks for the time.
Nim, are you comfortable adding those suggested changes to your motion?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you, Andrea, for bringing those up. Yeah, I would say I'll remake my motion as approving the letter in substantially the same format, but with the additions that Andrea suggested, highlighting being appreciative of the governor, and supporting AB 617 throughout the years, and then also referencing Otay Mesa port of entry and the importance of trade and the number of trucks crossing through the facility.
And the original discussion on the updated references and sort.
And the updated references.
Yeah, just trying to be clear. Jack, are you okay with the amendment motion?
Yes, I am. I appreciate it. I think it's good. And sorry to miscredit your earlier remark, Tim.
Great. Any other final comments or questions before we go to a vote? Hearing none. Anna, can you pull up the voting sheet?
Yes, pulling it up right now.
Great. Feel free to do roll call.
All right. We'll be doing roll call now. So when I call your name, please make sure to say yay, nay, or abstain. So starting off, Keith.
Yes.
Keith, okay, thank you. Jack.
Yay.
Thank you. Sarah, Giobi.
Abstain.
Thank you. Phil.
Yes.
Thank you. Tim.
Tim, yes.
And Nick, Paul.
Yes.
Thank you. We have Jose Marquez Chavez.
Abstain.
Okay. Jonathan Torres.
Abstain.
Janice.
Janice, you're on mute if you can hear.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Yes.
Thank you. Next we have Alicia.
Sí.
Gracias. Margarita.
Sí, sí, perdón.
Gracias. Sí, gracias, Margarita. Vanessa. Vanessa Contreras.
I don't see Vanessa.
Okay. Salvador.
Hey.
Thank you. Just confirming that was a yes.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Sylvia.
Yes.
Thank you. Ashley.
Yes.
Thank you. Josephine.
Yes.
Thank you. And Maritza.
Yes.
Thank you. So with that, we have 14 A's, yes, and 3 abstain.
Great, thank you, everybody. The motion passes. And thank you, Nick, for preparing that letter. I know that takes time and research. And thank you in advance for those updates the committee requested.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. Now moving on to our last agenda item, a presentation and / update from the Port of San Diego regarding an EPA Clean Ports opportunity. Phil?
Sure. Well, thanks everyone. Phil Gibbons again with the Port of San Diego, and you can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. I guess the state is running out of money, so I wanted to introduce everybody to an exciting opportunity that the port and our partners are considering. So I'll introduce you to a new funding opportunity from the EPA Clean Ports program. In our project that we're developing right now with many of our tenants and operators at the port, we're calling it the Port of San Diego Clean Cargo Project, to try to apply for it. We will be seeking a letter of support from the Portside Steering Committee. I don't have it available tonight because we're still refining the project, but hopefully in the next week or so, we can get that out to the steering committee for review and your consideration. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I just want to introduce you to the funding opportunity. So the Environmental Protection Agency, which is a federal agency, has released $2.8 billion for a new grant opportunity called the Zero-Emission Technology Deployment Competition. It's a federal grant opportunity. It's not at the state level, so it's going to be highly competitive. So ports throughout the country, both land ports as well as water-based ports like us, are going to be competing for this money. The grant opportunity was released in late February, and applications are going to be due at the end of May. This grant opportunity is unique that it's focused not just on infrastructure. A lot of times when we see grants from federal agencies, it's just to focus on the infrastructure side of things. This one is more focused on the end uses. So zero emission mobile equipment and vehicles commonly used in port environments. So cargo handling equipment, drayage trucks, locomotives, vessel craft like tugboats or ferries, etc., that you may see operating near ports. It's solely focused on zero emission technologies. So it's not looking to upgrade a piece of equipment with the latest diesel type engine. It's focused on zero emission, which is defined as battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell technologies. The EPA is looking to allocate funding depending on the size of the port. So the really large ports like the Port of LA and Port of Long Beach and Savannah, Georgia, New York, New Jersey, they're going to fall into a very large port category. And the funds that they may receive are between $150 up to $500 million. The Port of San Diego falls into a smaller port category, and we can receive anywhere from $5 million up to $150 million effectively. It does have a 4-year implementation, so it is a quick turnaround to actually deploy the infrastructure and deploy these vehicles. So when we're evaluating this opportunity, we want to make sure that we're going to be able to actually do that project within a certain amount of time. And the last thing I just want to kind of go back to is, because this is focused on zero emission technologies, the port really doesn't own a lot of the mobile pieces of equipment like trucks, like cargo handling equipment or vessels. So we're relying on our tenants and our freight partners to come to the table and commit to transitioning their vehicles and equipment over to zero emission opportunities. So right now we're actually soliciting feedback and requests from our tenants and operators to take part in this grant with us. Let's go to the next slide. I can tell you where we are conceptually with this grant at this time. Like I said, we're still refining the proposals as our tenants and operators are submitting their requests to us. But our grant application is roughly going to be focused on maybe up to $65 million. It could be less as we start to carve out and sculpt this project over the next several weeks. But we're going to have three main categories included in this grant application. One are some necessary electrical upgrades made at our 10th Avenue Marine Terminal. So as you may know, it's a very old terminal. The electrical infrastructure there was built in the 1950s, and we have to do a lot of upgrades just on the underground infrastructure to support future electrification. So things like switchgear, transformers, power panels, conduit and wiring to get power across the terminal is necessary. We may consider battery storage and solar as the budget permits, and as we're able to potentially do that within a 4-year time frame. Secondly, we'll be looking for zero-emission supply equipment. So this means the actual charging equipment to power the vehicles and vessels and trucks that we're going to be putting into this application. So that's, of course, needed. So those are the things that you'll see above ground, of course. We are looking at shore power for commercial hovercraft as well as ocean-going vessels in this application. So actually building the power capacity and the necessary plugs that we can plug in those vessels when they come to our terminal. And also, as you all know, we are hopefully going to be developing a zero-emission truck stop. We think that that's vital to getting folks into electric drayage trucks. And we're talking to the proposed vendor for that project about also taking part in this grant with infrastructure to support that project. And then lastly, the end uses that I talked about, which are necessary for this grant. We're receiving requests for a whole slew of equipment, from electric forklifts, larger electric lifting equipment like top handlers that are commonly used to move freight at ports, yard tractors or yard trucks that exist on the terminal to move cargo around, as well as on-road trucks. So trucks that visit our terminals and move cargo in and out of the terminals and along Harbor Drive and over the freeway network through the Portside community. So we're still refining this application. We're still getting some ideas and requests in from our tenants and operators as we speak right now. But as you can see, this is supposed to encapsulate an ecosystem to support these types of technologies, focusing on those necessary electrical upgrades, getting the fueling infrastructure in place, and then actually acquiring these pieces of equipment to actually start transitioning to zero-emission technologies. As I said, $50 to $65 million is where we think the sweet spot is for this grant opportunity for us. Now, there's also other categories that will be considered by the EPA in their evaluation, such as workforce development. So that's why we sent out that survey at the beginning of the meeting, and why we're trying to get feedback from the community on what type of workforce development they may need, because that's a vital part of this opportunity as well. Okay, why don't we go to the next slide? Oh, yeah, of course, this project will support the Maritime Clean Air Strategy, the MCAS, as well as the Community Emission Reduction Plan for the Portside community. There's a variety of actions in the SERP that we believe this project will support, including the Action E1, the advancement of and deployment of heavy-duty on-road electric trucks, reducing diesel emissions, and Action G1, Action G2, reduce emissions from ships at berth, Action G3, reduce emissions from hovercraft, and Action G7, promoting adoption of zero-emission technologies by our tenants at the port. So all of the hard work that this Portside Steering Committee has done, and the port has done, and the broader community has done to advocate for clean air in the community and the transition to zero-emission technology, I think will well position us for this funding. We know by being in the port industry, there's a lot of ports throughout the country that don't have this type of partnership and this relationship and this forum to talk about these issues. So we think we're in a better position to receive this type of funding because of these documents and because of the hard work that we've all put in for quite some time. Next slide. This is my last slide, just to kind of show a schedule here of what we can expect over the coming weeks and year, let's say. So right now, again, we're still refining the project, so we want to get that solidified for our submission. But we're going to be seeking letters of support. As I said, we'd like to get a letter of support from the Portside Steering Committee. You're vital to this. And we believe that both the SERP and the MCAS support this overall goal. And we may be reaching out to some of you individually as well for letters of support. It doesn't hurt to have lots of letters of support here, so we'll be reaching out far and wide. The submission deadline is May 28th. We hope to actually get it in slightly earlier because of the holiday season that's up at the end of May. But May 28th is the final deadline to submit. The EPA is going to review applications across the country from June to December, and they are proposing that they'll have a notice of proposed awards by the end of the year. So we'll see if they can stick to that. And then, as I said, there's a 4-year implementation timeline to acquire all these pieces of equipment and vehicles and install that infrastructure to support that technology, roughly between 2025 and 2029 or the end of the decade. And just to maybe close it out, I don't think I have another slide, do I? I'm sorry. Oh, I do. So just to summarize, yes, we will be seeking your support. Roughly $65 million request. This is a huge opportunity for us, everyone. You know, we strongly feel that the SERP and the MCAS were designed for this type of opportunity. This type of funding will go a long way to get us cleaner air in our region. And so we're just really excited about it. And like I said, we feel like we're well poised to receive this grant and actually perform. So I'll leave it there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So I'll just note, because the steering committee doesn't meet again till the date this application is due, we are planning to send this out to you all via email for email vote, since it is a time-sensitive item.
Yes, thank you.
Any questions for Phil or comments?
Are you excited about it?
Andrea? I think you're still on mute.
Thanks for the opportunity to comment. What a fantastic opportunity this appears to be to me, to, secure $65 million to help fund zero emission trucks, equipment, cargo handling equipment, etc. at the port and in this portside community. I think everything that you've stated, Phil, is right on point, and I would love to help in any way possible and I'm sure my colleagues at Sandag would and Caltrans and on. If you need additional letters of support, we're here for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? John?
Yeah, I just want to thank Phil on behalf of the Good Neighbor Project. You guys are taking advantage, in my opinion, of some programming and whatnot, some funding that can truly help the community as a whole. I just can't tell you how much I appreciate that. As a community member, gosh, for all my life, and of course my family's been here for 130 years. Thank you so much. It's a true blessing. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Any other questions or comments for Phil?
Hey, Phil, Keith Corey from the city. You mentioned that you're probably going to be reaching out to some of us individually. That's obviously a letter of support that we would be happy to write. So let me know what you need.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Keith. And I see a similar comment from Jose at Caltrans. So please send me your letter of support request. I'll be happy to help out. Mike Watt?
Hey, Phil, Mike Watt with APCD. Just wanted to kind of echo what we've heard from Sandag and the city and others that, APCD certainly is supportive and stands ready to help the port in whatever fashion we can to help try to secure these funds for the regions. It's, as you've mentioned, very, very great opportunity. Certainly supports both of our shared efforts in the MCAS and the SERP. And so we're excited about it and willing to do what we can to help bring that money to the region as well. So thanks again for your leadership on this and look forward to working with you all in the coming weeks and months.
Great, thanks, Mike.
Great. Last call for comments, kudos, and questions. Great. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
I want to open it up to the steering committee as well as any folks in the attendee side of things from the public, any general public comments, requests for future agenda items. I will note that our next meeting is in person in Barrio Logan, hopefully at the Chicano Museum, but we need to connect with Josephine and the folks there first to confirm. But yeah, please raise your hand if there are any general public comments. Andrea?
Thanks once again for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to let this group know that the port will, and Sandag, me and Peter from the port will be presenting to the Barrio Logan Community Planning Group on May 22nd on Harbor 2.0, Vesta Street Bridge, if folks are interested in another update.
Thank you, Andrea. If you can send that to me over email, I'm happy to forward it to everybody as well.
You bet. My pleasure.
Last call for any general public comments.
Yeah, Chewy, I from our understanding, there's conversations between APCD and the port around an MOU to address some of the pollution at the port side. And so I wanted to know if maybe there can possibly be like an update on how those conversations are going, and if there's yeah, really just kind of an update on port MOU discussions.
Great. Thanks, Nick. I think that's a great agenda item, update for a meeting, unless don't want to put APCD on the spot or the port.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can definitely bring back to the group as we continue to work with the port. We'll make sure to prepare for an update. We want to make sure that this group is engaged for sure. So yeah, happy to bring back that information.
It's coming up. Mike, I saw your hand raised, but maybe it was related.
Domingo beat me to it, so I was just going to echo what Domingo said. Thanks.
Perfect. With that, I think we can move on to closing out the meeting. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. Yeah, excited to hear about all the updates and all the efforts you all are doing on behalf of the community. We'll be sharing more information about logistics for the next meeting, but just know it is scheduled to be in person in Barrio Logan, and we'll work on securing a location with the air district. Great, and with that, I think we can hop off a few minutes early. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you, everybody. Good night. Buenas noches.
Good evening.
Good night. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Thank you.
Buenas noches.
Good night, everyone. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate all of your commitments to, meet late at night in many cases, but your commitment is being, I believe, well received by the community as a whole. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night.
John. Good night, everybody.